Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Futures. European RMI is not finished yet, but we're currently sitting top 33%. Don't expect that to change given that there's only a couple of games left and all my players are through, so I should get my 8 points easily, although I could have done a lot better. Wonderful ended up being a terrible choice. He was fantastic until I decided to choose him for fantasy, then he just dropped off, just did not perform at all. Frozen also didn't really live up to the expectations I had for him, which is a little bit disappointing. But Nexa came through and so did Alexi at the end. So overall, it was my cheaper players that actually got the work done for me. But it was enough. 69 roll points as well. Nice. And 40 booster points. So could have been a lot worse, all things considered. I'll take it as we go into Group B. So I've used the same bracket tool just to envision how I think this is going to go, which is mostly important for round 1 and round 2, as we know, because we're kind of aiming for 2-0 teams just to maximize our chances of getting through. And I think for this one, compared to Group A, all of the favorites should be winning in round 1, except for Heroic beating Preezy. I mean, Heroic are the favorite, but their seeding doesn't favor them, but I do think the seeding is spot on for pretty much everyone else here. I think some of the ones that are maybe up for question, Mao's Guild. Guild sometimes just comes in looking insane during the RMRs, but their online form hasn't been the best. But Mao's are very hot and cold, so I don't know. Gamewell Agent as well are often a team that are slept on and could upset a Vitality that are looking a little bit weak at the moment. And in fact, I think just generally, Vitality have a really difficult run during this RMR, so something to consider if you wanted to draft them. Spirit, on the other hand, I think have a very easy run because of the 3rd seed. That means they avoid Astralis most likely in 2nd round, and they probably get Apex if things follow like this. And I think ENCE is pretty simple for them. ENCE's moment felt like it was k1to, right? I just don't know if they're going to deliver here as well. Obviously, they've got, the skill. Hades has looked great. Glaive's Calling's been decent, so I think they can get through, but I don't have them as a favorite at all. And I think with these teams, what's interesting about Group B is I feel like it's a little bit more bottom heavy, whereas Group A felt a bit more top heavy, and I feel like there's a lot more mid teams in the Group A bracket, whereas for Group B, I think the mid teams who are like competing for around the 3-2, 3-1, 2-3 bracket where, we've got teams like Gamewell Agent, I guess, Cloud9, Monty, maybe Preezy I'd throw into the mix, Heroic. Everyone else kind of like Para, Ecstatic, OG, Nexus. I don't see these guys just getting through. I just think drafting from them is probably going to be a mistake. So I'd avoid those teams. I think most people are going to double up on Spirit. I know I am. You kind of have to with their run here, with their form, with how they looked at k1to. Unavoidable. The question is, who do you draft around it? And as usual, I advise people to go for the teams that I've got here who obviously are the ones everyone's going to have going through, at the top here. I do think Cloud9 are going to look pretty decent here, all things considered. So I'd be looking at these kind of 8 teams to draft from, and maybe at a stretch you could get an ENCE or Guild player, but I'd avoid any of these teams from the bottom 8 for the most part. Let's talk some players. First, with Vitality, I think the most tempting prospect is going to be Messi at 196. I think he's one of the most picked players. Has been struggling at recent events, but I think just the caliber of player that we've seen from him, the fact that Vitality went number 1 seed and should go through, I don't think he's a bad choice. Still should be better than Apex, but who knows? He did go missing recently. And then I think Spinx is the next best choice. I think when Flamesy and Spinx are only 3k apart, Spinx is the obvious way to go here. And Zywu, at 241, it's not the worst choice when donk is 260, right? That's an extra 20k. Zywu, there's a chance he plays even more games just because Vitality probably don't go through flawlessly. I don't know. Zywu is always going to get you points, and I feel like I would go him over donk, which sounds crazy because donk is nuts, but donk's in, first of all, a quarter of drafts, so he's overpicked. I don't know if he can maintain that sort of form that he showed at k1to. Probably can, but still, the amount of money you have to invest into him, the other players you pick are gonna suck. Like, you don't want k1to in your team. If you get Zywu, you don't need to pick k1to. So, something to consider. I would go Zywu over donk. I think with Spirit, though, if you're doubling up, you probably go Chopper and then one of these 3. I don't think there's a wrong choice here. I think Shiro and Magic's probably the better choices, but Zontex has proven that he is a good option, but I think Magic's is probably better value for 10k less. Considering he's been putting up kind of similar numbers. Not the same amount of impact and definitely can't take over a game like Zontix, but can still deliver a lot for his money. Miles, I would not be heavily investing here. I think Brolin is a mistake. I got tricked by Brolin at k1to, as we remember, so I would never pick him again. I think Torji, Jimbat are probably the two you're looking at. But yeah, Miles, difficult one to pick into, but I think could be a good choice because not many people will pick into them. That's something to consider. Monty, prices are quite reasonable. SDY is a little too expensive in my opinion, but Krasnal and Warrior are probably pretty decent choices for that price point. Cloud9 still have good prices as well, and I think just that's because their performances haven't been great. Electronic's still too expensive for a team that might not go through well, but Hobbit, Perfecto, even Exile, all decent choices. I think Hobbit's maybe the best, but Perfecto, 205, not bad. Apex, already said I don't think this team gets through. If they do, it's barely, and I don't know if there's much good to get here outside of maybe JChem, but I just don't have confidence in the team, and for these prices, you should invest elsewhere. Similar story for Ends, I think a lot of players around this low 200 price point, which sounds appealing, but then you can get players from teams that have got better runs for the same price. Like Heroic, for instance, despite the low seed, Shush for 192, Tetris for 202, who's been playing really well lately. I think these are probably the two players I'm looking at from this team. Gamer Legion, similar issue to some of the other teams in terms of the pricing, but Acor is an RMR demon. k1to is one of the few players in that 180 to 190 category, so it could be a tempting choice. I think Astralis probably have the most appealing pricing though. Remember, Device and Blameoff used to be like 130 each, 230 each, so they've come down a lot. Device at 215 feels really good, but I think Stan is maybe the player I'm most interested in here at 204. He's been putting up numbers on par with Device and Blameoff outside of a drop-off at the k1to play-ins. If you ignore that event, he's been doing really well, and I think it's a good choice. A lot of people picking Yabi, 194. Not many players in this price point, and I think with Donk being so popular, people are grabbing Yabi alongside him. I understand it. Super inconsistent, though. I think Stan is the best choice here. Preezy, again, prices just don't really support picking these teams. I can get Stan for 3k more than Refresh, for less than Roy. Doesn't make sense to me. I would not be picking OG. I know people are picking k1to. It's because they want Donk. He's going to go 0.4 rating across the 4 maps they play. Don't pick him. Guild, there is some interest here because Synopsy is probably the only player in the 180 to 190 bracket outside of maybe k1to that's actually worth getting, and he's definitely worth getting over k1to if Guild do their RMR magic. That's the question mark for me. I think Scenarii is interesting, has been performing pretty well despite the team struggling, and is very cheap. Ecstatic prices, yeah, okay, but I don't know, man. I just don't think this team gets through, and these two, I just wouldn't touch these last 3 teams, to be honest. Right, so for my team, as I mentioned, I'm not going Donk. I'm not going Zywoo. I'm not going in on the gold. It didn't work out for me in the first RMR, so for this one, I'm going to be going in on a bit more of a even ground across my players. But I am going to go Double Spirit. Chopper Magix is the combo I'm going to go. I think Chopper Shiro is a great combo. They're probably the best 2 combos in my opinion because I don't think Donk is that viable. But Chopper Magix, with the way Magic's been playing lately, it just makes sense to me to save the 10k from going to Zontix and to save the 23k from going to Shiro. So that's my combo from Spirit, who I think are necessary. And then I'm going to pick Mezzy, who again is one of the most picked players, but for good reason. Yes, he's had a bit of a slump, but we know that he's got good highs. He's on a team that has the best seed and has a good chance of going through. And honestly, I just can't afford any of the other players on the team. So Mezzy gets the pick. Despite not working out for me last time, I'm hoping he'll bounce back. For the last 2, this has left me with about 200k each. I'm going to start with the player that I said was a must pick from Astralis. Stan, 204k, riding off that last performance, has been really good since he came into this team, and I think he's a much safer choice than Yabi or Stare, and he's a lot cheaper than Device and Blameoff. So I'm pretty comfortable with Stan here with Astralis' run. It feels good. For my final choice, I've got a lot of options actually, but I'm going to be going Hobbit. I think Hobbit has been the standout player on the Cloud9 roster in the last 3 months in terms of priced performance, alongside Perfecto, who has been good Boomage is too inconsistent, as is Axel, and Electronic's too expensive. Hobbit perfectly fits my price as well, I can afford him. And I just feel like with these 5 players, I'm looking for a good performance each game. I'm not looking for 1.7 ratings, every second game. I'm looking for a consistent 1 to 1.2 rating every map with good booster activation, good roll activation. And so that's the objective here. That's who the Cybermen are. We've got great roll activation on all of these players. So I feel very good about this team. I didn't want to go heavy in on donk. Didn't want to risk it with Zyru. Playing it safe. We're not going for a top 1, top 5%. This is a top 20% draft, I feel. But I'm okay with it. I want to know what you guys are doing. I want to know if anyone's doing donk and how you're doing donk, because I just don't believe there's a viable donk draft unless you just get very lucky. But hey, maybe that'll be you. As always, let me know what you're doing and good luck.